So this is my third time at 9:30, so it is a charm, I guess. Let's see, and you tell me afterwards. Our gospel story today showed an image of Christ. If we hear it or heard it, it's harsh. Christ was so straightforward and bold, saying, "No, woman, I'm only here for the lost sheep of Israel." Thinking about this, why did Jesus say this? Or did he really say this? Based on my research and my readings, there are only two incidents in the scriptures that Jesus was scolded by two people. One, do you remember in the wedding of Cana when Mary said, "We don't have any wine"? And he said, "Do whatever he tells you." Guess what? Jesus followed her. And now this is the second time that Jesus heard, "Woman, I'm not here for you." But because of her desperation, Jesus was moved in pity and compassion. And I like this dynamic because we can think about this as, but God is God. Jesus knew that this is going to happen. But more so, I've been reflecting more and more of this. As a human being, Jesus is capable of also learning. Jesus is capable of listening. And then this is the tragic part of this story, I think, because the woman wanted to be heard. If we put this in our language, we say, "Jesus, are you listening? I'm so desperate here. I want my daughter to be healed." And guess what? If this thing happened to your child or your children, would you do the same? And if you're not being heard by your spouses, what would you do if your husband said, "No, I'm watching football, I'll do the trash later"? The moms will be upset. And if your children are not listening, doing their homework, what would you do to them? Go to your room and you'll be grounded for a week. No, you wouldn't do that. But if we're not being heard, we get frustrated. Frustration is part of human experience. The question is, what do we do about this? In the gospel story, and the core of this gospel is listening and hearing. And I think I told you this before. Hearing is different. You hear only sound. But listening is different. It's more deeper because there's learning and understanding involved. Jesus is training his disciples and even the people around him learn how to listen. Have you been in a country that no one speaks our language or doesn't speak English? You get lost in translation. I'm going to tell you a story. Back in my favorite country for now, Germany, and after 3 weeks of intense traveling different cities, my last week was visiting my friend with his children. And I told you this, I think, before. It's a farm life. They have chickens, they have horses, cows, and vegetable gardens. And the grandfather asked me, "Would you like to go to a tour of the city?" Of course, I said yes. It's a free tour. So I said to you like 2 weeks ago, my bike is ready, or the car is ready. But the grandfather said, "Nope, you're going to use that tractor on my barn." A John Deere tractor. And I said to myself, I did not come here to Germany to ride those bikes and John Deere tractors. I said, "Do you have your California license?" "Yes." "Can you drive?" "Yes, but my car is Toyota sedan." And don't worry, I have this 13-year-old kid will be with you and teach you how to drive. 13, and I am on my 40s, and teaching me how to drive, he's gonna drive me crazy. And this is what happened. My problem is two things. I have a car with a stick shift. Number two, how are you going to get up there? I'm short, as I said earlier. And then I was driving, learn how to drive. I did not realize manual driving is different from stick shift. He said, clutch, gas, clutch, brake. But my brain is telling me I have a stick shift, so I just let go of the brake or the gas, it will stop. No, the engine always stops. And this is happening for about an hour and a half. And people are looking at me, who's this Asian kid driving a tractor in the middle of the field? And guess what? Also, this 13-year-old German kid is yelling and screaming like no tomorrow. I had no idea what he was saying, but I am doing the same thing. Be quiet. I don't know. I can't even focus here. Lost in translation. And guess what? Also, I still have nightmares about this voice in my ear about the German kid. It was, yeah, a little bit awkward, awful, but at the same time, I learned this. If no one listens, we explode. If no one listens, we get frustrated. And then at the end of the an hour and a half tour, the grandfather who was watching us from a distance said, I am not worried about the two of you. I'm worried about my engine because it is expensive. Thank you, John Deere, for creating this machine. And I said to myself, what life gives us is adventure. What life gives us is a new experience. Coming from South Pasadena to this farmland somewhere in Germany, I took the challenge, but at the same time, I learned a lot. Before you said yes, you have to Google it and examine the tractor. If I know how to drive it, do your research. And also, how can we apply this story to what we're talking about in the gospel? I'll try. What happened with Jesus and this Canaanite woman, they were lost in translation. But at the end of their conversation, Jesus' message is about compassion. Think about this in your life. When it gets really difficult, when life gets really complicated, the only thing you can do to move forward is, I am sorry. And say this sincerely. I am sorry I did this. And for Jesus and this Canaanite woman, the compassionate heart of Christ. And this is the core of Christ's message every single day, even he was still on earth. And even for us today, the 21st century Christians, learn to listen, learn to be heard, and also learn to be compassionate. In our world today, it seems that everyone is talking. No one is already listening. And I think for us, in our prayer life, even here at church, come a little early and just be quiet. Sometimes silence is the best sound that we can hear. Previously, in other readings, especially the story of Elijah, God was not in the fire. God was not in the rain. God was not in the flood. But God is in the silence of our heart. I'm going to ask you this. Maybe you can reflect on this week. Whatever you have in life, whatever you're going through in life at the moment, joys, separation, death, birth, this is about building relationship with one another. But look at it as a gift, full of adventure. I learned this with my trip, that welcome adventure in life, because sometimes we get stuck with our own life. Welcome little adventure in life. Maybe this week most of the kids are going back to school. Don't give him lunches. I'm kidding. Give them something different. Put them a note on their card or something. Or for the kids who are here, for the kids who are going back to school this week, Maybe this week you say to your parents, thank you for sending me to school to learn about God, about others, and about myself, and to learn about each other, and also to learn to listen. For those who work at school, our school parents, this Mass is for you as well. Thank you for sending your children to school and support them in whatever they want.